Hello, this is Andy from Andy's Amateur Adventures. Welcome to part 4 of my speaker upgrade for my Ford Maverick. So part 1 through 3, I replaced speakers that came with the truck, and now I'm installing a subwoofer amplifier combo. It's the Kicker Hideaway 10-inch. They call it an HS10. They can call it whatever. It's a subwoofer amplifier combo. And I laid everything out after I unboxed it. You have the amp and the speaker combo, and then you have that wire and that control knob. Those go together, and you put it up by where you drive, and that's how you control the bass intensity with the turn of a knob. Then you have those brackets, which holds the sub-amp combo onto a board, and you screw in the back of it. And then you have a couple little wires that came with it, and those little loops that came with it. Nice that they gave you the inline fuse, and they actually gave you a spare fuse for it, because inside that inline fuse they actually have a fuse populated, and then they gave you a second one as a spare, which is very nice. And finally, coming with the Kicker Hideaway is the instruction manual for it. All the wires that are to the right came separate from the Kicker Hideaway. I got them from Plug and Play, and they're a wiring harness. That way I don't have to cut and splice and figure out which wire goes where within my truck. I can literally, as the company's name implies, plug and play. So the first step I did when installing this is I got everything together, and I just put the brackets on the back of the subwoofer amp combo just to see how everything would fit. There's two ways that you can put the brackets on the back. One makes the entire thing longer, and one makes the entire thing wider. I initially put it in wider, and then when I went out to the truck, I figured out I needed to put it in the longer one. But this was a learning process. I also got some furniture leveling coasters. Told some people call elevator bolts. Either way, that they have extremely flat head and then a long spindle. And the furniture leveling ones actually come with a rubber grommet on them, which I thought was going to be perfect for this application because it'll help reduce vibration going into the frame of the vehicle. These furniture leveling glides or sliders, whatever you want to call them, also fit exactly with a 1/4-inch nut, which was very easy to get from the hardware store. Unfortunately, they didn't go well into those little brackets that were on the subwoofer, but I just drilled it out a very little bit, like a 30/2 of an inch, and they fit through perfectly after that. Now I went over to the vehicle afterwards and did a test fit and realized I'm going to have to remove a hardware piece from the vehicle. It is in the XLT. It's an unused piece of hardware. It is the mount for the B&O subwoofer that comes with the Lariat Luxury package. I don't have the Lariat Luxury package, so I just go ahead and I removed it. And just wiggle them back and forth a lot, and they'll break right off in your hands eventually. So now I'm back inside from my test fit, and I realized I need to change the orientation on those brackets. So that's what I go ahead and do. I change them so they're in the long way instead of the wide way. And then I realized I need to find a way to mount those furniture levels in my truck. So I took a piece of cardboard and I made a jig. So I just set the amplifier combo onto the piece of cardboard, marked where all the holes were, and then I punctured the holes, and then I pushed the not the brackets, but those furniture level bolts through, and then I secured them with a 1/4-inch nut and washer. And after I got everything secured down, I trimmed the piece of cardboard down to size. That way it would fit in that open area nice and flat and easy. And I was ready to go. And then I got JB weld, and I prepared my JB weld to go on the back of it. That way I could JB weld those furniture leveling bolts or slides, or what you call them, onto my truck, and that would become the mounting base for the Kicker Hideaway. Now, it should be noted that before I used any JB Weld, I went and did a final test fit just to make sure it would fit right. So for those of you who have never used JB Weld, it comes in a package with two sort of liquids. You take a sacrificial piece of something and you squeeze one of the piece of that liquid out, and then you squeeze the other one next to it, and then you mix the two of them together again with some sort of other sacrificial thing. I just used cardboard. It worked just fine. And once you have it all mixed together, one of those liquids comes out of the tube, white and black. It'll turn gray. Once everything's a nice gray consistency, you know you mixed it well, and you just smatter it on nice and thick like peanut butter onto whatever you want to weld kind of together. So once I got it all on the back of those furniture coasters, I put it on the back of the interior of my truck, and I held it there for about 10 minutes, and then I was able to walk away after that. Now, I did secure it further on after that. I got a piece of cardboard and put it on the bottom so it wouldn't fall down, and I also got two industrial magnets that I had. I put one against my truck inside underneath the cardboard, and I put another one on the other side of cardboard, so it was pulling it towards the truck. And then I let it sit overnight. It takes about 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours to cure, 24 hours for it to get fully hard. But once it was there, the next day, I was ready to actually begin the wiring and installing of the Kicker Hideaway. Alright, and now it is the next day. I have everything that I need for the installation sitting in the bed of the truck, and I have all 4 doors of my truck open, and I removed the rear headrest for my rear seat. So I start by removing the trim piece as you saw, and then you start working forward. And all the trim pieces, they just push forward, and they kind of just set out of the way. You do have to move the seatbelt a little bit, but you don't actually have to detach the seatbelt. And you don't have to fully remove the trim pieces, but you do need to have them loose so you can get up underneath them. And that white box looking thing you see is actually a reservoir that's designed to have speakers, or to have wires and wiring harnesses run through it. And that's what I'm attempting to access. So when you come up to here, you're gonna have to work front to rear a little bit, remove that one trim piece. It literally just pulls towards you, and you see I'm not even using trim removal tools. I'm literally just pulling on them, and they're coming off. And I didn't pre-loosen anything. That's just kind of how they sit. And that trim piece, I'm not gonna remove it. I'm just gonna let it sit there. And then I'm gonna open up these wire things, which you're supposed to be able to do with your hands. I was not able to do with my hands. I actually ended up getting a small flathead screwdriver and opening them. So once you have access to that wire panel, you're going to need to remove this trim piece that you see right there, and that gives you access to the fuse box. You don't actually need to do anything in the fuse box, but you need access to it. And then you need to remove the glove box. So open it up, and then you just pull out on that little black piece that you saw me pulling on, and then you push those 2 tabs in, and it just folds down and pulls out, and that's how you remove your glove box. Incidentally, that's also how you access the cabin filter if you need to change the cabin filter as well. Just a little FYI. So continuing our teardown, we're going to go ahead and we're going to access the head. And now I'm setting up the camera again. While I'm adjusting the camera, let me say that I am uploading a fully unedited video so you can see how long this entire process took, and you can see a little bit more in detail than these fast forwarded ones. But the next thing I do is I remove this this vent control unit, and to do that you use the trim removal tool and you just pull it forward, and a little snappy tug and it comes off. But don't pull too hard because there are 3 wiring harnesses that are attached to it, and you don't want to break those. And you don't actually need to detach anything. What you need is behind it. That's where the head unit and your computer for your Sync 3 is. But for the head unit, you want to detach the far right wiring harness, and that's what controls your radio and sends the signals out to your speakers. Alright, the next thing I did was I ran my wiring harness from the edge over outside of the fuse box spot next to the door, up and through that open space and over to the head unit. And then I connected the wiring harness that's in the vehicle to the back of that wiring harness adapter that I got from Plug and Play, and then I plugged the other side of that into the head unit. And that will do all the signals for the amp sub combo. Now, if you are controlling it with 12 volt instead of using your head unit to control it, you will actually need to go in the fuse box, and you'll run. There's a blue wire coming off the sub amp combo, and you'll run it and tap it into a fuse that turns on and off with your truck. And I will put up a wiring diagram for the Ford Maverick. My apologies, it's a fuse box diagram, not a wiring diagram. But if you rotate it to the left, numbers 1 is at the bottom, numbers 7 and 14 are at the top. That's how it's oriented within the fuse box. Fuses 3 and 6 are the only two fuses in this box that turn on and off with the truck. The rest of them are live the entire time. So those are the ones you want to target for tapping if you need a fuse that turns on and off with the truck. Alright, at this point in the video you can see where I was able to feed my adapter harness through, and there's 2 sides to it, so I got one to come through, and I'm gonna go ahead and pull it the rest of the way through. It takes a little bit of finagling because there's not a whole lot of room up in there, but it works just fine. And it is directional, so you cannot plug the wrong end to the wrong side. Plug one end of the wiring harness into that adapter, and the other end plugs into your head unit. And you plug them, and then you set it to the side, and then you reconnect everything that you just disconnected up front. So aka those vent covers, you can put the glove box back in, and you can put the fuse box cover back on, and then begin working to route your wiring harness back to the rear where the sub amp combo actually is. And that's a good view of what it looks like inside before you button it all up. I also decided to use that what's it called, that control module that comes with the subwoofer. You don't have to use that. You could use your computer system in your head unit to do it, but I decided to go ahead and install it. I just took a piece of double-sided Gorilla Tape and put it underneath where I mounted, where the head unit is, and I ran the wire back parallel with the actual wiring harness. And you see me do that in fast forward here, and then I continue working the wires back. So I considered removing the back there and running the wire to control that bass controller through there. I decided not to. was too much work, but I found a side routing that ended up concealed the wire just as well. So you don't actually need to take anything off. You can just run that wire up through the side, and it works beautifully. And you see that's the side I ran it up, and it was nice and concealed. No one's able to see it, and you can see where I mounted the control. And I just again did it with dual side tape instead of needing to drill into my truck. Now, regarding the wires that come off the sub-amp combo, you have several. You have the wiring harness, which is really a cluster of wires, but for this piece, we'll just treat it as one. Then you have that control wire. Then you have your two, which are really important. The black one, which is your ground, and the red one, which is your power. When you hook them up, always hook up the power one before you hook up the ground. And then you have a blue wire, which is optional if you control it using a fuse box, which I ended up doing later because it wouldn't turn on and off correctly for me. Then you run the blue one up to a fuse tap in the fuse box. And that's all the wires that come out of the back of it. It's actually pretty simple and straightforward. So once I got all the wires ran into the back seat, I decided to mount the subwoofer itself. You see where I have our cardboard jig there, and on the top right and left, those are some industrial magnets. I have other ones behind it, and they just held it on there overnight while everything dried, and it dried perfectly. So I go ahead and I just use the 4 bolts and I mount it, and it sat there perfectly. It's been there for months now, and it works great. And once I had the sub and amp mounted, I then finished running the wiring harness and that black control knob cable to the subwoofer amp combo itself, and just replacing the trim pieces along the passenger side as I went. And the next step I did was to run the power wire, and I ran that up the driver's side, and all the trim pieces on the driver's side up until you get to right next to where the driver's side door is exactly the same as it is on the passenger side. And this is the trim piece that's a little bit different than the passenger side. You just use the trim removal tool and you pull it out, and it goes with a little bit of snap. It is a little bit taut, a little bit snug, but just keep working at it and you'll eventually get it. And now I'll speed back up while I run the power wire up to the front. This shot, you can see where I have the red power wire run up behind the brake pedal, and I'm also pointing out this grommet. That grommet is your pass-through for the firewall into your engine compartment. You just go ahead and grab it and pull it out, and that's where you're gonna run the power wire through. And on the back, you have those 3 holes. I just took a 3/32 drill bit and drilled a hole in it, and then I ran the power wire through it and put a little bit of silicone on it, and it worked great. Now in this shot, you can see that red wire. That's where it's coming through from the passenger compartment into the engine compartment. And you want to pull it up, and then you'll connect your wire to your end line fuse, and then connect that fuse, the other end of that end line fuse, up to your positive battery terminal. Alright, and here's a shot of what it all looks like while I was done. If I was going to run it again, I would take it off and I'd run it underneath that black wire. I realized that in hindsight. But on the Ford Maverick, those 2 bolts on the left are actually accessory positive power. So you can actually put 2 things on your battery without actually having connected directly to your battery terminal. But now I'm going to come through come back and you see where it's coming out of that grommet. And now I'm just going to police up the wires and make it look nice and pretty, and put all the trim pieces back in, going back to the subwoofer. Now the final thing I connected up before I connected any of my wire harnesses up to the sub-amp combo was the ground. And you see that there's a ground already there, nice and handy in the back. I just connected it right there. I believe it was a 10mm socket. Unfortunately, my truck's being shipped right now over to Europe, so I can't actually run out and check it. But you just took that bolt off, and I connected the wire up right there. I put a circle eye thing on the end of the wire and connected it up, and it was good to go. And then I just plugged in all the wiring harness and I turned it on and I used it. Now one thing that got me when I initially turned it on is I didn't hear much of the bass. I didn't realize, but there's volume control on the subwoofer itself. From the factory, it is turned all the way down, so you'll get barely anything out of it until you adjust that. So that confused me a little bit. I thought something was broken, but then I just turned that volume knob up and it worked perfectly. And that's how I installed it. You see that the power went from red to blue. That means it's on. I was able to adjust how much bass I got using the settings of my vehicle, and everything worked out great. Now there was a small issue of vibration, so afterwards I ended up getting some sound deadening, and this is a fast forward of me putting in the sound deadening. I also mentioned that I needed to put in the or to connect to the fuse box, and this is also a fast forward me connecting to the fuse box to turn it on and off. But sound deadening, very easy to put in. You just roll it up and you put it on the back like so. I ended up removing the sub-amp combo and then just putting it back, but not taking out any of the wires. Alright, you've heard me ramble on for about 30 minutes about all the steps I went through installing this thing. I am by far a professional, very much an amateur. This is the second time I put a subwoofer in a truck. The first one was a 91 F-150 that I had in high school. I needed something a little bit better than what it came from the factory. But I hope this video helped, and I will leave off with a glamour shot of the installation complete. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a great day.